Hey, what's up everybody? Ridiculous Trages here, coming to you with another crippling bout with depression. And today we're going to be talking about something very important, which is Sonic the Hedgehog. Specifically looking at the 3D games, so something I would like to make abundantly clear before I start. I have played Sonic games since I was a very small child. I have loved Sonic this whole time, but in the 3D games there are some serious underlying issues that have not been resolved since the very first 3D Sonic game, and that, among other things, is going to end up killing the 3D Sonic franchise. Let's talk about that.
No. No.
Before I start talking about anything else, though, I'm going to define a couple of terms. One being dark, the other being edgy. When something is dark, it's not trying to make itself seem cool. It's trying to make a point or show how shitty situations affect a person and how that person overcomes or succumbs to these situations. Examples would be Nier Automata, where you're struggling with questions of what it means to be alive in the first place and if androids really matter in the grand scheme of things, or what separates them from machines and what separates a human from an android. Things like that are dark. They have serious questions being asked. They have scary questions being asked that we don't like to think about. We don't like to think about what makes us any better than a machine. We don't like to think about how far we would go to survive in an apocalyptic scenario. We don't like to do that, and that's what dark things are supposed to make us think about. They're supposed to make us inspect ourselves to see who we really are as a person and see if we like the person that we see. The other side of the spectrum is edgy. When something is edgy, it's a 13-year-old attempting being dark. However, instead of anything even remotely effective, it comes across as using shitty situations to make something seem cool, regardless of the fact that it sounds like it comes straight out of the diary of the kid who wears cat ears and a tail around the school. Hilariously, this is often the result of out-of-touch old men attempting to understand what the kids these days like that doesn't relate to surrealistic memes or naked Japanese cartoons. Examples of this would be hatred. You're just a guy who shoots people because you're a fucking dick. There's literally no deeper meaning there. You're just an asshole. Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat has a lot of guts and gore and grossness in it, but the grossness itself is the reason for the grossness. It's not trying to ask you a question or make you think. And I'm not saying Mortal Kombat isn't a fun game or that it's not an enjoyable game to play, but the guts and gore are there for themselves, basically. They're not there to make a point or anything. And not everything has to make a point. Some things can just be fun, but it is definitely what I would consider edgy. If I had to sum it up in maybe like a sentence, dark would be Heath Ledger's Joker, but edgy would be Jared Leto's. And edgy can't be a good thing. I see this popping up a lot on Sonic discussions. Oh, this is edgy done right. No, it's not. There's no such thing as edgy done right. That's not possible. It doesn't make any sense, because to be edgy is to do a shitty job at something that you're trying to do in the first place. And we'll talk about this some more in a minute when we get to talking about Shadow the Hedgehog. When I said I was reading a lot of the "this is edgy done right" type shit, the reason I was reading a lot of it is because I have been deeply submersed into the fan base over the past couple of months trying to get this shit together. From what I can tell, and so far as I know, in the early days of Sonic, the fan base didn't really seem to be nearly as rabid as it is today. Sonic had only ever been the soft, friendly mascot of Sega, and that was good. You know, Sega had their mascot, just like Nintendo had Mario, and it was cool. And it wasn't weird, and it didn't make anybody uncomfortable to look at or talk about. Slowly, Sega continued to introduce more and more characters, and fans started creating their own original characters, which is something that almost every fan base in the history of ever has done. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But the issues started when Sonic made the jump to 3D, and all of a sudden Sonic had voice acting and jokes, and Sonic was so cool. And I'm not saying that Sonic Underground did not have a little bit to do with this, but things like this started happening.
'Cause there is no cock like horse cock.
I realize kids need an outlet to vent their creativity or issues with the world at large.
Send your asshole into
that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. The bad thing is when these kids get older and they don't grow up and they begin taking Sonic the fucking Hedgehog seriously. Kids who like Sonic but fail to transition into adulthood turn into man-children and begin to delve deeper and deeper into their prepubescent interests while projecting their adult desires onto the Sonic series. They want more adult and more gritty things, but they want that from a kid's game. If you need another example, you can see the same thing with bronies. It's one of the reasons this video was so painful to make. Do you know how much porn I've seen of this little blue fuck? Way too much. It was definitely not a comfortable experience. It's because of these man-children that the fandom has slowly collapsed on itself, forcing out the normal people to the point where people are afraid to say that they like Sonic because they don't want to be associated with shit like this.
Though more of a cutie than a hottie, you can't deny the fact that she's still attractive. Two things that make her attractive are the fact that she wears a dress.
This fan-base problem gets worse when you have multiple generations of these man-children vehemently arguing that the best era of Sonic was their era of Sonic that they grew up with. This divides an already small fan base even further. People act like the games in their childhood were without flaw, while ripping each other's favorite games apart. Some people think 3D Sonic shouldn't exist in the first place. Others think that 2D Sonic should just go away, and it's all argument all the time. For instance, Sonic 06 was a technically bad game. Was it bad because it was different? No. Was it bad because it was in 3D? No. It was bad because it was a rushed, buggy piece of shit with an overcomplicated plot and terrible game design, and yet there are fans who will defend it until their heart finally loses the battle to all the Dorito dust clogging up their veins, and they will not recognize a single one of its flaws. It's this fanboyism that makes Sonic Boom so funny. It pokes fun at all the actual things that the Sonic fan base does.
Being a role model is overrated. I'd much rather be hilariously edgy.
Let's act out my Sonic fan fiction. I'll pick something family friendly.
And that Sonic fans do not like to admit. It makes these fanboys defensive, and it makes it more difficult for people to want to talk about Sonic in the first place. People don't want to try Sonic because the people who talk about Sonic make it absolutely fucking unpalatable. What I'm trying to say here is,
You guys are the ones that ruined Sonic for everyone! Can't you see that?
in terms of the story problems, Shadow the Hedgehog was kind of the big catalyst. If I'm going to be fair and honest, I guess that's not technically true. Sega Japan actually originally pushed for an edgy Sonic from the start. Sonic had sharp fangs, he was more angular, he was in a rock band, and he had a girlfriend that had big tits. However, the Sega USA CEO at the time said, "That's literally the worst plan I've heard since Pearl fucking Harbor," and so he shut that shit down, and we got the more pot-belly Sonic that everybody has come to love. However, this desire to be edgy took root, and eventually we were given Shadow the Hedgehog. The idea behind Shadow is not inherently terrible. He's a rival for Sonic, complete with contrasting colors and ideals, but his shtick is written with kids in mind and what kids think is cool. In Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow's edge isn't too overplayed. It's childish, yes, but Sonic is first and foremost a kid's game. The idea was for Shadow to be a more intense, stoic counterpart to Sonic, for the older kids playing the games, not for the adults playing the game, because nobody in their right fucking mind would look at this and say, yes, this is cool. This is what I want to model my life around, like a man-child would. Do you see the issue? Sonic Adventure 2 was marketed towards young kids and young teens, so it's excusable for it to be campy and for Shadow to be the cool guy even though he's kinda just a fucking dick. I don't really classify Sonic Adventure 2 Shadow as edgy. Is he poorly written? Sure, but it doesn't feel like he's supposed to be a dark character. It doesn't feel like he does the things he does to be cool. It feels like he's got motivation outside of wanting to be cool and being an asshole. He's kinda just a douche. This, of course, all goes out the window when you talk about the story of Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow gets what you could classify in a vacuum as a dark backstory. He was created for a purpose, and then his best friend got killed, and he's pretty torn up about that, and so he's a little bit damaged. Okay, that's not edgy. I wouldn't say it was edgy. Bad things happen, people deal with them. I do consider Shadow's game to be a pivotal point in the Sonic franchise though, because it refuculates Shadow's character into something irreparably and inseparably edgy. I feel like the conversation at Sega went something like this. what if we gave the black one guns and made him say fuck words? And then the other guy said yes, and they proceeded to blow out of a hooker's ass crack. This is where our egregious issues with the story over all Sonic games begins. You know how I said Shadow's backstory isn't super crazy? Well, it's not super crazy if I ignore the part of the lore where Shadow is the nut baby of a certain black alien. An alien that also leaves immediately. So, naturally, the only black hedgehog in the series doesn't have a dad and uses guns. Thanks, Sega. Maria has super death disease. Granddad makes a deal with Alien Satan to try to fix it. Alien Satan DNA makes Shadow and also apparently the Bio Lizard. The CIA shoots up the space colony Ark for no reason, the black aliens return to enslave, breed, and eat the human race, and on top of all this, Shadow acts with no real conviction until the literal end of the game, no matter what route you play. The story is, unsurprisingly, the main issue I take with Shadow the Hedgehog. As an example of what I mean when I talk about the story being nonsensical and absolutely atrocious, you can get the Android Overlord ending, where Shadow says, I'm an android, so I will rule over the world with other androids, and that'll be how things are. Except there's a way to get that ending where he would literally never meet Eggman to have the conversation about him being an android in the first place. The reason why I consider this game to be so pivotal is because it opens the door for Sega to do more dumb, this isn't a kid's game anymore shit. Surely because Shadow the Hedgehog got away with it. It's not even the added edge factor that all the villains after Shadow the Hedgehog get that aggravates me as much as it is the contrived nature of the stories told in Sonic games after Shadow the Hedgehog. Sonic 06 has you fighting Mephiles, who, as described by the Sonic Wiki, takes great pleasure and delight in hurting others, and has been shown to have a very warped and twisted sense of humor, making him a very sadistic and psychotic individual. And that's only half of Solaris, which is the ancient sun god which literally eats time.
That body of light is the sign of a super-dimensional life form. Standard attacks won't work on him. He eats dimensions for life.
Shit like Solaris is exactly what I'm talking about. An eldritch god with two evil components, which is literally destroying reality on a fundamental level, and fuck it, let's throw in some time travel because you're an asshole and we hate you, love Sega. This is not a compelling story. This is not a complex story. This is stupid. This is throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Then we have the whole werehog fiasco, which entails a dark elder god being awakened, and the inverse elder god is a cute little animal mascot, and they've been at war for thousands of years. How did we get from fucking with Eggman to literal warring gods?
But hey, Sean, isn't Chaos called the God of Destruction in Sonic Adventure?
Yes, he is actually, but Chaos isn't Shadow the Hedgehog squared combined with Dickfoot McGee. He doesn't eat time, he doesn't time travel, or turn me into a fucking werehog for whatever godforsaken reason. Interestingly enough though, the 2D Sonic games stayed consistent in terms of knowing what they were without taking a one-way trip to Crazy Town. Disclaimer, I don't really have too much to base my opinion on when it comes to talking about Infinite as a character. However, I think this line alone...
I don't know anything about you, not even your name.
You may call me Infinite in the brief moments that remain to you.
tells me all...
You may call me Infinite in the brief moments that remain to you.
We need to know. Listen to this and tell me everybody at Sega is not smoking crack rock out of soda cans. I'm excited to see what the actual fuck is going on in terms of story with Sonic Forces. Excuse me, as this user puts it, Sonic Focus. Because I really want to see if Sega can continue to one-up themselves on how stupid and nonsensical they can make a story. I don't want to say that Sega shouldn't be allowed to experiment, but after Shadow the Hedgehog, Sega has been acting like they don't know what the fuck they want the Sonic franchise to be. It's as if Sega is trying to listen to their fans, and then this is the result.
Release all of those sounds that are trapped in your mind.
Sir, are you okay?
I am the ultimate life form.
If you're going to make a game with a complex story, that's great. but commit to it. You can't half-ass the story and the gameplay and expect literally anybody but the most deranged furry to enjoy it. It also might be a good time to realize that Sonic the Hedgehog just might not be a good place to tell a compelling story, and you might want to look for a different IP to do that with. As it sits now, Sega seems to be playing heavily on nostalgia to pull people in, which indicates to me that they are scared shitless of whatever the fuck Sonic Forces is. They're scared that it's not going to be able to stand on its own. Furthermore, while I don't really take any particular issue with custom player characters, it's clear that Sega is relying on a gimmick to get this type of person to buy the games, so that they can have a monetary safety net, which doesn't require them to actually make an enjoyable fucking video game. So, some people have said that Sonic has never been good. That's patently false. Sonic has been good in the 2D era, and Sonic could have been good in the 3D era. It was fun in the 3D era. They were clunky and unpolished, but they had something about them that was fun. And this is not just me talking from my nostalgia perspective. I have went back and played Sonic Adventure 2, and through all its flaws, it's still got a little bit of something there that's fun. Deep down, it could be a really good game. It's because of this that I want Sonic Forces to be a good game. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Sonic, but Sega's 3D track record since 2005 has not been instilling any confidence in me. The 2D Sonic games have been continually getting better for the most part. Sonic 1, Sonic Advance, Sonic Rush, Sonic Colors, but the 3D games have all been of questionable quality. So to start off with, let's talk about Sonic's jump to 3D. Sonic Adventure 1 was a sloppy transition into 3D, and had lots of issues that just never worked out. A camera that's more of an enemy than anything, and the game had bugs everywhere. The physics was broken, and it was just hard to make Sonic do what you wanted him to do. Sonic lost some of his charm in the transition to 3D because the controls and overall level design suffered because Sega just didn't quite have their foot in the 3D world yet. That's okay, that's fine. The intention was good, but not the execution. I feel like that's excusable though. Sonic Adventure 2 was a step further in the right direction, but still had the issues with 3D platforming because of the motherfucking camera. Something that should be easy is made insanely hard by the fact that the camera won't cooperate with you, and something that should be hard is made nearly impossible because you can't see what the fuck you're supposed to be doing. Sonic can't seem to follow simple instructions, and as such, either ends up launching past enemies you're trying to kill, or simply disconnecting from the ground and flying off into the void. Also, shit like this happens. But, like I said, not bad for a second try. Some of the issues got alleviated, some things got a little bit better, the camera got a little bit better. It's not good by any stretch, but you know, they're working on it. Sonic Heroes, we're moving towards better. New mechanics that are fun, enjoyable, and then an uncooperative camera. So now we're at a big turning point. We're at Shadow the Hedgehog, which again takes the series closer to being fully functional and playable, yet for some unknown reason gives Shadow a piece in the ability to carjack people. I feel like if I wanted to do this, I could just mod in Shadow into GTA and I could have played that. The camera is god-awful. I can excuse the general issues present through the Dreamcast and GameCube games. There were games that handled things better, there were games that handled things worse. Past this point, we're in territory where it's no longer okay to make the same fucking mistake over and over again and have people act like it's okay. So, let's talk about the big one. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic 06. Ooh-wee. This game is a barely functional soup of ill-conceived mechanics thrown into a broth of poor story choices. It doesn't work. The game doesn't work. It's broken. It takes forever to load. It doesn't make any sense. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Also, just look at this. This is supposed to be Dr. Eggman. And I'm just not having it. I'm not. So, now we got Sonic and the Secret Rings, which had the possibility to be really good. And then it fucks up the control system for some reason. The controls for this game are about as loose as my butt. And for some odd reason, there's an RPG system that makes you grind, and then on top of that, you don't get from one stage to the next. You have to do a bunch of tedious missions to unlock the next stage. What the fuck? It's also completely on rails. Sonic Unleashed is like a Reese's Nut Butter Cup, where the peanut butter is only about this big, and it's delicious, but the chocolate isn't chocolate, it's fucking coal. The entire premise of the game revolves around Sonic being a were-furry and dragging you through unstable 3D brawling, and then it rewards you with some of the best 3D speed stages in recent history. Also, we seem to be moving away from the camera being an enemy rather than a tool used to see around a level, so that's good. Sonic and the Black Knight, lots of issues. still enjoyable, even if the mechanics were very weird. People complain about a lack of speed in this game, but I've never really felt it. If you do the right things at the right time, you can keep up your speed and still kill enemies. Now, it's not the best game. It's overall short. The game did some cool stuff, but it never really pushed it into any new territories. Like, here's Sonic, but he's got a sword this time. Have fun. Sonic Generations. This is my favorite recent Sonic game. It's fun, but then the whole game is lacking in overall length. I realize that Generations was a game made to cash in on nostalgia, but at the same time it manages to do some fairly fun things. The game controls work much better, even if they are a bit wonky, and the physics is kind of off a little bit in just almost imperceptible ways, and the new 2D stages that are made out of the old 3D stages never feel exactly right. It's like their level design isn't quite to where it should be. Sonic Lost World. I had a really hard time with this because I thought it was probably going to be enjoyable. You know, it was the newer Sonic game. This is the game that makes Shadow the Hedgehog look pretty alright by comparison. Why are we slow now? Why am I playing Mario? If going at snail speed isn't enough to make you flaccid, the level design is a jumbled mess of different ideas trying unsuccessfully to imitate Mario Galaxy, but with Sonic elements. So, go slow, but also go fast at the same time, but you really never end up doing either. In addition to lacking 3D design, the game throws in some random 2D sections. Remember when we had fun playing Sonic? Fuck you. You don't ever get to do that again. They're arrhythmic and they're not fun to play. They have no fluidity to them, and they're just kind of there almost to taunt you, and holy fuck is Sonic slow. Even worse than being slow is the fact that lateral movement in any way causes you to slow all the way back down to a walk. So trying to move around these shitty cylindrical levels is enough to make you want to cry. The game wants you to go fast, but slow, and you never end up doing either, because doing either might put you at risk of having fun. With my thoughts on the games by themselves out of the way, let's talk about the overall progression. Sega's really bad about half-assing two different components of a game, putting them together, and then pretending they've whole-assed one Sonic game. Unleashed had the boost mechanic and the werehog. Sonic Lost World still has powers from Sonic Colors and tries to emulate Mario Galaxy's success while ignoring what's supposed to make Sonic fun. Sonic Adventure 2 has 3 different gameplay styles that all have fundamental design flaws. Sonic 06 even goes on to repeat this mistake. The biggest problem is a lack of focus by the dev team, and even worse than that is Sega allows this to be published. Somebody sat down with these games and said, yes, this is an acceptable game to release. I'm sure it will be well received. And I don't get why. I mean, I guess I do. It still makes money, and that's the only thing that's important. At some point, one would think that Sonic Team would get tired of making shitty video games. I want to enjoy a 3D Sonic game. I enjoyed Sonic Adventure 2 despite its flaws. I enjoyed Generations despite its flaws. I even enjoyed Shadow the Hedgehog, but nobody who has made a 3D Sonic game has ever made an attempt to get rid of these flaws that have persisted since Sonic Adventure 1. In terms of overall progression of quality in the 3D category, the graphics have been the only thing to reliably improve. Sonic and the Black Knight looks really good on the Wii, and the aesthetics and fidelity of Lost World make it the Patrick Bateman of the series because it's pretty, yeah. It looks good on the outside, but it has no fucking soul to it. Controls have been fucked with and fucked over in every iteration, and they're all just passable. It's never even gotten all the way to the point where it feels like your character does what you tell it to when you tell it to do it. The camera has always been an issue, it's still an issue, and because of this, the platform sections of the game will never be able to stand on solid ground. If the platforming is still suffering, then the game can't really be a 3D platformer plus speed because one half the game just does not work. Sega needs to sit down and decide what they want Sonic Team to make, and Sonic Team needs to actually sit down and make a good game. Sonic Team has only survived because Sonic is Sega's mascot. Can you imagine a Luigi Shadow the Hedgehog style game where all of a sudden Luigi has a fucking gun and he carjacks people and he says bad words? Do you know how ashamed Nintendo would be after the fact, after everybody made fun of it? There have only been passable 3D Sonic games, and that's because of poor design choices, and that needs to be fixed. I know it can work, but somebody at Sonic Team has to actually decide how to do that. If you're gonna be outdone by some motherfuckers making a fan game, then why do you still have your job? In the interest of not saying, hey, Dickwipe, make some better games, how about it? Without making any sort of suggestions on what I would like these better games to entail, here are my suggestions. Sonic Adventure 3. Can already tell that's gonna make somebody angry. Sonic gets the boost gameplay. Tails gets a cooperative camera, more interesting combat, and some puzzles. And Knuckles has his same Easter egg hunt deal, but has to fight more enemies, and the fighting is more of the focus. And to make Knuckles' levels smaller, more condensed, but more packed with interesting things rather than one big themed area with a bunch of nothing in it. Sega lets Sonic Team bang hookers and do blow instead of making functional video games. Sonic Team makes half-assed games without dealing with fundamental issues that the games have had since Sonic Adventure 1. And then the rabid fanboys defend or attack these ill-conceived games as the pinnacle or the greatest sin of all time. Sonic keeps flatlining, and Sega keeps bringing him right back with lower and lower effort, and one day I feel like the cost of doing this is going to outweigh any possible benefit, and we're just not going to have Sonic games anymore. That might be better than the franchise living on without a soul. Forces could be the last we see of the Blue Blare, but I sure hope it isn't. If what I'm seeing is anything to be believed, that is not likely in our future, friends. So, tell me what you think, call me an asshole, thank you for watching.